Yeah, good evening. You are welcome to this discussion this evening on the ongoings in Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran. What has happened over the last 2 weeks is that there has been a protest on the street of Iran as has never happened before. Thousands, some say millions of people are on the streets demonstrating against the regime of the mullahs. The mullahs came into power in 1979 when they overthrew the monarchy, the constitutional monarchy that was in power then, and since then they held power for the last 47 years in that country. However, things came to a head 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, when a protest started on the street, presumably because of the depressing economic situation that the country had fallen into, partly because of the several years of war, several years of sanctions that were placed on the country by the United States and other Western countries. And then the war that took place, the 12-day war that took place early in the middle of last year. And of course, as a result of the war and several other conditions, problems, economic problems spiraled in the country to the extent that the currency of the country fell from the 70 reals to a dollar that the country had in 1979 when the mullahs took over to 1,400,000 reals to a dollar. And then, of course, the war also meant that several infrastructures were destroyed and economic problems ensued. And there was the protest on the street, presumably by the people to improve their standard of living. And the protest transited from the war to the situation that we have transited from, I beg your pardon, from protests for improvement of the living standard of the people to the current situation that we have in the country, where there's a protest as has never been before of people calling for the end to the regime of the mullahs that have held sway in the country for 47 years. There are speculations, and there have been speculations that the people, there have been speculations on the streets that, and in the social media around the world, that perhaps the regime may not survive up to June. The betting markets, the poly market in particular, has a bet going on there now, where people are betting on whether the regime will collapse before the 31st of January or not. And with me in the studio to discuss this topic from Portugal is Dr. Joel Ikeme, the owner of the political blog, Joel's political blog. Dr. Joel, you are welcome. Well, it does appear that he's not actually hearing me. I can't see him online. But I'll take you before he comes back online. I'll share with you one of the major television stations on YouTube, which has been chronicling the happenings in Iran. I'm referring to 2C TV. Let's have the report that they had a few 2 hours ago.
Just coming in, but let's have a go. This is the model. What people out also I have had good sleep now, so I am fresh. We're going to continue the long. It's going to be that going to be very important. Then I'll explain why, because that relates to the U.S. action on it's talking about who has been eliminated. So Islamic Revolutionary, the Iranian state TV, Islamic Republic state TV, have announced that many have been killed by the enemy. Of course, the Iranian people are defending themselves.
The connection is very poor. I
He
can't see anything in the video.
was involved in the massacre has been eliminated. Now, initially said Catholic. All having to be IUC based in IUC residents, somehow. Okay, fair enough. And then they were confirmed. They themselves confirmed that the Iranian people, or I call them the enemy, have located his home and they carried out the assassination in retaliation to obviously his role. So he's also have was commander of the Islamic Republic ballistic unit in Kashan. Has although this one was actually assassinated. This was professional hit. He was assassinated. Suicide drone attack in Kashan, and a suicide drone basically hit himself. A lot of of course, there are multiple operatives, commanders, and generals have been eliminated again in I don't know exactly who they promote now. They lost in it. Last summer, they to the regime. Islamic ADB in Iran have now confirmed that hundreds of their personnel in leadership they have lost hundreds of personnel in leadership. The Iranian people continue to fight back. Let me show this video. That's just come to the Islamic forces on the ground.
The connection is very bad. I can't hear anything.
Okay. You cannot hear you can't, you are not yet on. I can't see you, but I've had some comments coming online already.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't see you. I don't know whether it's the connection or your connection.
No, I think it's from your end, because I couldn't even I didn't even hear anything about what you shared on the screen, and I can even barely see you. You're freezing, sort of. The image from your end is freezing.
Okay. I can't even see your image at all. Okay. You want to reconnect, to restart and reconnect? I can't even see you.
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, I can see you now.
Okay, I'm just trying to see.
I can see you.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's better now. But I can't see you. I think the connection is very bad from your end there.
It does appear that my network is very bad.
Yes, because it's not connecting at all.
Uh, yeah, but I have a comment from share it.
I can't see you. I think the connection is very bad. We seem to be having connection problem. The connection is very bad. Can't even have meaningful conversation here because of the connection. So MTN at it again. This is usually the problem with the connections when you're trying to go live to discuss issues, a lot of issues, especially at night. And we particularly chose this time of the night, hoping that the network will be better, especially with the MTN and all of that. But it appears that has not been the case. Okay.
I can see you. Can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you very well, sir. Yeah, I can see a comment
Very well
from.
now. So can we
Yes,
continue?
yes, I can see a comment already. I can see two comments. I think they are of the same person. I'm not sure. Um,
Okay. Can you read can read the comment? We can continue the discussion.
yes, it's the same person who has
There are a
commented
few people
about.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same person. It says Zionist sponsored media outlet appearing like concerned entity, Tulsi feeding you with lies. Your source of information is drawn largely from Zionist regimes and enemies of Islamic Republic of Iran. And then the person also said, for better information, get information from the likes of renowned eminents like um, Pepe Escobar, George Gallo, Larry Johnson, Larry Jones, Professor Jeff Sack. You see, the problem is when people try to look at issues from the emotional angle. I've had the rare opportunity of interacting with scholars who are from Iran. I started PhD with some of them, and we've had extensive and robust discussion around the regime in Iran and the activities of the Iranian government. Because as we speak, a lot of Iranians have fled the country. They've moved to other parts of Europe and some other Western countries just to get a better life because of the inflation and the cost of living and even the endemic corruption that even those who because the regime is the what the ideology is centered on theocracy and things like that. But it appears at the end of the day, the people have they feel so much changed about the system. Now, you know, when this whole protest started in Iran, I had the opportunity of discussing with one or two persons who are from Iran, and they told me that look, they expressed some sort of pessimism that this protest might not succeed. Okay, because their argument was on the fact that look, they've had within the last 10 years, they've had about five of similar protests. But these protests have not yielded anything because the state have suppressed these protesters and they've gotten their way. But in my opinion, there are certain conditionalities. If you go through the readings and research about protests, revolutions, and how regimes have been toppled in the past. If you look at Vladimir Lenin, if you look at in China, if you look at in Spain, if you look at countries where revolution has succeeded and regimes have been toppled, there are basically five conditions that will be fulfilled for a revolution to say, okay, the revolution is now successful. We have fiscal crisis. Are there fiscal crisis in Iran at the moment? Absolutely yes. The economy has gone down, especially in the face of the sanctions. The sanctions that Iran is facing. There's so much fiscal crisis. Like you mentioned in the introduction, in 1979, a dollar will exchange for 70 reals. Right now, as we speak, a dollar will exchange for almost 1.47 million reals to $1. The economic inflation is around 50%. The food inflation is over 70%. There's high level of unemployment. The coffers are empty. And because of the sanctions, Iran sells oil only to China at ridiculous discounts to China. So later on, I'll talk about China's involvement in all of this. And the currency is on a free fall. The inflation level is high unemployment. There's corruption. There are allegations of endemic corruptions and double standard. Now, a lot of Iranians whom I have spoken with, not people in government, the ordinary Iranians who have fled Iran over the years, something as little as even 4 years ago, who have told me that look, and one of the persons I spoke with someone who had been, in the compulsory army and stuff like that. And then he's talked about the kind of systemic corruption that exists and the double standard where hijab enforcement and all of that is the order of the day. But meanwhile, those who are in government, their children who live in the outside part of the world do not even cover their hair. And some of these principles or these laws do not even apply to some of these people in government, to their children. Okay? And aside the physical crisis, some of the conditionalities that you will see, and then you say a revolution is successful. Apart from the fiscal crisis that Iran is currently facing, there's a divided elite. Where is the people like Ahmadinejad and the former president? They've all been sidelined, and these people, some of them are under house arrest and stuff like that. And then there's diverse oppositional coalition, which we are seeing currently in Iran, and there's convincing narrative of resistance and favorable international environment. Now, these are some of the conditions that you will, measure the success or otherwise of a revolution. And as we speak, if you check the revolution, the protest, the massive protest that's happened within the last few weeks or few days, you find out that these conditionalities, whether you like it or not, they're in place. So for me, I think, though I've been monitoring the situation, and today even the government is issuing statements like all of these things that they will be crushed, and even the minister or the speaker of the parliament or something like that was trying to drag the US into the whole thing, try to drag Israel, trying to drag everything into the crisis. But I am not a Zionist sponsored media outlet. Iran is in control of the situation. Now, this is propaganda. You are the one now trying to misinform gullible audiences. Let me tell you, during the Arab Spring, when the anti-government forces were closing in on Gaddafi in Libya, even few hours before they succeeded, the government will tell you we're in control. The government will tell you we have everything under control. The government will tell you everything is in place. The government will tell you the protest will end. The government will tell you we are trying to crush these people and all of that. At the end of the day, Libya fell. And this person that is even making this comment cannot agree otherwise, or cannot tell us that the people are not suppressed in Iran. I don't live in Iran, but I've had the opportunity of interacting with people who are from Iran. Can you see me?
Yeah, I think, Dr. Joel, that to my mind is not even the issue at stake now. The
No,
issue
I'm
at
just trying
stake
to
now,
respond to the
what is
persons
the
in the chats
reality on the
and
ground? The
everything.
reality is that, yeah, the situation on the ground is that there has never been this protest that has lasted this long with this type of intensity.
Mhm.
That from all sources, including even the BBC, this afternoon, because the mainstream media have actually blanked out the news
Yes.
until this evening that they started yesterday evening or so that they started reporting. We've not had this type of situation as we've had in Iraq before, a situation where we have so much protest on the street, over 100 cities as at Thursday, and indeed, we are also told that. We had killings and killings that which was what I tried to show from what the Tusi TV reported. Tusi TV is an Iranian. His father, unlike what the man says, his father is not in jail, but his father is not allowed to leave Iran here, and he doesn't want to leave Iran even when the opportunity came up. The fact of the matter now is, which I want us to discuss, is if Iran, the Islamic regime, does not collapse, what do you think is going to happen in Iran? Will there be programs? What do you think really will happen? Let's build this scenario. Let's assume that in 2 weeks' time or 1 week's time, the protests fail. They do not succeed. What is going to happen?
Yeah, if the protest fails, because I thought about it today, I said, if these people do not get their way, based on the previous times that such protest held, if the protest fails, I see a new North Korea. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, but I
I
can't
can
see
hear
myself.
you.
If the protest fails, for me, I
Yes,
see.
I can hear you. Yes,
Okay, if the protest fails, I
I'm
see a
controlling
new.
it. I want to. Yes.
Okay, if the protest fails, I see a new North Korea, because the government is they are not stupid. What the government will do, want to find out, about international collaborations, and if the oppositions in exile had contributed in one way or the other into this. And for me, for the economic part, I don't see the economy improving at any time soon because of the sanctions, because of the international sanctions on Iran. So, but if this protest fails, what I see is a new North Korea. I see even a more repressive government that will even be worse, that because right now it is said that two of the most isolated countries in the world, North Korea and Iran, in terms of repression from the government when it comes to human rights and everything. And so if this protest fails, I see a new North Korea in the offing, because right now and I see mass exodus of people, and I see a case of mass migration of people out of Iran to look for better life elsewhere. Because if you look at the exchange rate of the dollar, right now we have $1 exchanging for close to 1.4 million reals. That is outrageous, and there have been allegations of empty coffers and corruption and all of this. So, for the government to ensure that this doesn't happen again, because the government will think this has happened one too many times since 1979, and within the last decade, we've had close to five of such protests. So what I see happening is, if the protest fails, or the fails to achieve its objective of toppling the Khomeini regime, fails in toppling the government, fails in removing the Islamic regime in Tehran, then I think the government will tighten the noose. Now, something you didn't even see today. Today, I came across a clip. About Iranians protesting in the UK, and some of them went even to the Iranian embassy in the UK to remove the flag, and were displaying the pre-1979 Islamic regime flag, the Zionist flag, there in the UK. So that tells you, and you see massive protests of Iranians in other parts of Europe. So that tells you that the people are already fed up. And This person left a comment here. He said more than 98% of Iranians voted for the Islamic Republic in 1980 referendum after a year after Islamic Revolution. Yes, that is fact. That's because the people had so much confidence in the Islamic Republic that their fortunes would change. But within the last 30, 40 years, the people have seen that this is not the case. And they've seen double standard in terms of the implementation of even the Islamic law, of those in government and those outside government. So the people have seen, and the people have also seen that the economy is not in their favor at the moment. So when they do a comparative analysis of what you have in Iran in other parts of the world, they feel there's a need for change. You might have the conspiracy theory about the fact that the West is interfering in all of this, but like I asked somebody today, can you scientifically prove that the US or other the G7 or G20, like he mentioned, that they are at the forefront of this? The Iranians are tired of high food inflation, 70%, and all of that. And some of the indices, like I said, mentioned at the beginning, that allows or for which you can say a revolution is successful, we're already 5 out of 5 ticked in Iran. So for me, I think they might see something out of the current protest. But if it fails, the Iranians are the noose
Well,
would tighten.
people, there are a lot of sentiments, both when you are talking about Iran and the Middle East. For instance, you often hear people tell you that talk about Zionism and so forth. Zionism simply means Jewish nationalism. Jews to have a state in Israel. So when you are anti-Zionist, it means that you don't want Israel to exist as a state. I think many people talk about it without even understanding when they say
Absolutely.
anti, you are a Zionist. Of course, it's a lot of ignorance that people are exhibiting. Zionism means nationalism for the Jews that want to have their state in Israel. And the question I asked one of my friends before in a platform was that why are you against Jews having their nationalism? That is racism. Arab have
Yes.
Arab nationalism, and there's nothing bad with Arab nationalism. So Zionism is Jewish nationalism. So what is wrong with words which they think which are emotional and some of which are not even based on any science or any knowledge? But that is not the issue. The issue now uh, is a fact that Iran today is not like Iran that we used to have
Absolutely. I
a
totally
few
agree.
months ago before the war. We're having tensions the type that we don't have. We're having people on the streets. Even the government came out to say that about 200 of its soldiers had been killed. We've never had this before since 1979. We
Yes.
also do know that as at today, the economy is at a standstill. Nothing is functioning. Every day, people are out on the streets. For the first time since 1979, people are out shouting that they want the monarchy to come back, and the crown prince, who was not popular 5 years ago, nobody was talking about him. He was like an irritant and so forth. Today, he told the Iranians to come out on Thursday and Friday, 8 p.m. to protest. And millions of people literally came out to the street to protest. Now, my take about what is happening is that there is really nothing new in governments being toppled, things changing. That was what led to the government being toppled in the first place in 1979.
Yes.
There was a change in 1979 before because people came out to the street to protest and said they wanted a change. So it's a human thing. that the only thing constant about life, about societies, is changes. If you even look at the history of the world, before in 1900, that is in 1900, we didn't have as many countries that we have in the world today. Today, there are about 190 to 200 countries in the world today. At a point, there were only 50 something countries. Another point, it got to 80, 100. And in the last, since 1945, we've had more countries emerge from the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
We've had countries emerged from the Eastern Bloc. We've had some countries emerge from Africa, Eritrea, and South Sudan.
South
And
Sudan.
probably there could be more countries again in the world. That is just what has happened. That is just the way society moves. There's nothing emotional about it. But however, the question that we need to ask and talk about is what really will be the impact of the Islamic Republic falling. Well, the first thing that I think will definitely happen is that uh, the support that Hamas, Hezbollah,
Hezbollah
the rebels in Iraq, the Shia rebels in Iraq, and
and
some
Lebanon.
of the rebel groups in Syria will stop. The funding will stop. And Lebanon, that is the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the funding will stop.
Yes.
Because even as of today, even if with the current economic crisis that is happening, I doubt it whether even if they survive, they will have so much funds to throw around to build the weapons, to build what the Israelis call the ring of fire around Israel. And of course, I think it was a clever thing for the Iranian Islamic regime to use proxies to fight wars so that it will not itself fight war within Iran. And that was the case in Iran until the 12th Day War. Because apart from the fight that he had with Iraq, there was no direct contact in terms of military actions between Iran and Israel until the 12th Day War,
Yeah.
which opened up the serious weaknesses of the weapons that and the air defense systems that are bought from China and Russia, because they collapsed within 1 hour. And of course, the same thing happened in Venezuela, where the American technology overwhelmed the air defense system
Mm-hmm.
in Caracas, and the Americans went in at some people and abducted, took out the head of state,
The
and
president.
went free and left the country before the military could respond. And I think part of the problems that part of what we are going to see, and that will be the worry of China and some countries around the world, is that very many countries will lose faith in the technologies, military technologies that Russia and China are selling.
Yeah, I totally agree. But for me, I see China's angle. China is a relationship with most country, as far as I'm concerned, is largely transactional. They are just more about what will improve China, what will boost the economy, and you know, it's all about geopolitics for China because China, we try to adopt the sit on the fence approach because we don't see China trying to ensure that international law is upheld or issues related to that. And I'm sure China must have seen it coming that given the the free fall of the Iranian economy, that Iran might not recover from it, especially during the 12-day war that really exposed the weapons of Iran and how much Iran lost to the US bombs within those 12 days, and the amount Iran had invested in those in that little war. I'm sure China must have seen that, look, these people, they are not what they used to be. Because ask yourself, the crown prince just said, okay, there's going to be protests and all of that, and the people are now calling back for, the old system. It simply tells you that Iran has fallen. And like I said, from the points I mentioned earlier on about certain conditionalities that gives credence to the success or otherwise of a revolution. If you do a tick mark of all of these conditions, you find out that right now within the short protest, all of these things are there. So for me, I think, but what happens next is, where would Khomeini go? Because the something they're closing in, and the person there who is dropping the comment, they said the source of information is from enemies of Islamic Republic. It is unlikely to be accurate. Now, these are facts. These are scientific facts. These are research facts that are available at the click of a button. So when you talk about these things, it's not a question of being emotional. It's not a question of trying to say who's right. What you should understand is, in my point of view, I maintain a an objective standpoint in the whole of this conflict. Okay, he said Iran government is not a regime. If US, France are not regime, Islamic Republic would come out stronger. Iran is in BRICS and not isolated as you think. Yes, but how much impact has been a member of the BRICS impacted the ordinary Iranian? Right now, the currency, the economy is the free fall. Your coffers are empty, and only China buys the oil from Iran, and they buy them at ridiculously discounted prices. And Iran has spent so much trying to fund Hezbollah, Hamas, and the rest of them. Now, all of this has taken toll on Iranian economy, whether we want to accept it or not. What you should understand is, I try to be objective when it comes to discussing these issues, and I try to be scientific as much as possible when it comes to discussing these issues. So I'm not anti-Iran, or am I pro-America, or am I pro-France, or am I pro-West? I'm just saying these things from an objective standpoint. So you know so well that if the Iranian government has over time been involved in things without taking the public along. Because how can the economy fall so bad that the exchange rate of the dollar to the real is 1.4 million real? So that tells you that there's really an economic problem going on. Hopefully, if the protest succeeds and that marks an end of the Islamic regime, it simply means at the end of the day, it will be a watershed after 40 something years of a new dawn in Iran. But things will not just go back as easy as it used to be. It's a gradual process. Otherwise, ask South Sudan. After the referendum that gave birth to South Sudan, the country is still trying to find its feet. So these things do not just happen automatically. But I just hope at the end of the day, these issues will be resolved. But as for the economy and the corruption and the allegations of double standard when it comes to implementation of the Islamic law that borders, especially on hijab and other issues, I just hope that within a short time, all of this will be, and like we discussed off camera about the involvement of other Arab nations in what is happening in Iran. It simply tells you that there's a lot going on behind that we have no idea about, especially when it comes to the dichotomy, of the Shia and the Sunni Islamic ideology. So that separates Iran from, you know, the other countries. So let's just hope this whole thing, if it succeeds, good for the Iranian people. They'll have a breath of fresh air. And what you should know, in previous protests, sometimes you hear death to Americans, death to Israel. But in this case, the Iranians, the protesters are targeting even the mosques in Iran. It simply tells you that at the end of the day, this thing might just succeed. And what the government is doing, just like what we saw happening in Libya and the rest of them, is simply propaganda. That they're on top of it, they're on top of it. So let's see what happens
Yeah.
in coming days.
Well, in the coming days, a lot will happen. If you see some of the pictures coming out of Iran, notice that the violence has been much. A lot of
Yes.
government buildings and facilities have been destroyed,
Over
and
580 people dead.
notwithstanding the ban on the internet and even cellular
And the media.
networks, we've had a spike in the media. We had a lot of information coming out. However, the question to ask is what really happens now in the next 1 week is something to behold. Do you see the Americans striking, and where will they strike? I foresee that if the United States notice that and Israel notice that the situation is getting out of control, their eyes are on the areas where uh, the
The military.
enriched uranium is
Yes.
today. I'm sure their eyes are on those places because
Mhm.
there will be part of the reason why I think they may have to intervene will be to ensure that the enriched uranium does not fall into government collapse, because some elements within the government or outside the government itself may try to make attempt at seizing the enriched uranium, and it falls into the hands of some individuals. That will be a problem. I'm sure the eyes of the government in the United States and Israel will be on those sites and where those things are, so that they will secure the enriched uranium. As it is now, because of the large number of people that were killed the last 2 days, the mainstream media will also join in reporting what is in Iraq. And many people who are not aware of some of the details of what is happening, may begin to see that the scope of the protests is not like what happened before, that it is much more than what we had in the last protests. Let me ask you, as we try to run up,
Yes.
what what is informing or what do you think will inform the attitude of the governments in Western Europe? How do you see them intervening? I've read reports in some French media of family members of the members of the government looking for visas to go to France. Will France take them in again, or what do you foresee happening?
Yes, I think at some point what will happen will be humanitarian situation. From what I see, because judging from the number of death and people who will be displaced at the end of the day, but it depends on where the pendulum swings. But what I see at the end of the day, because the whole thing will now be subjected to issues relating to humanitarian crisis. So even if some countries in Europe will have to take some of these persons, it have to be on humanitarian ground. And for those who are already in government, given their hard anti-Western stance over the years, I don't see those in government, approaching any Western country. That is where the issue becomes a little bit dicey. And when it comes to the people, in the event that these things, do not go to the way of the people, which is quite unlikely, I'm seeing a situation where people will now have to start seeking political asylum. And you know, seeking for political asylum is not something that is new. We saw what happened after the Arab Spring, where you know countries have to absorb people from different Arab countries, from Syria and the rest of them, on humanitarian grounds, and for the fact that they were trying to seek political asylum. So I think at the end of the day, it depends on where the pendulum swings. But right now, I think it's too early to make predictions about where would the people go, because as it is, it appears what we are seeing on ground that the people are winning. Lot of government buildings have been erased and all of that. So I think what they will be preparing for is post protest or post revolution rehabilitation and reconstruction. That is there on one side. And about the involvement of Europe and all of that, Europe is sort of quiet about the whole thing because of the sanctions that have been imposed there in Iran. But the Donald Trump has come out to say, look, treat the protesters with respect. If we see any form of repression against the protesters, we will come in and intervene, and the rest of them. And like you said, America probably already has its eye, because the government might want to deploy what I would call a plan B to quell the insurrection or to quell the protest or revolution. So at the end of the day, it depends on what happened, because what we're about to see now is probably a sort of a regime change about like what happened in 1979. So let's see what will happen, what the EU would have to say about all of this, and if people will be absorbed, maybe government officials or protesters, based on humanitarian grounds and sort of asylum. So
Well,
yeah, we'll see what
I think
happens.
we have to leave it there. The internet connection is very bad.
Yes,
Maybe you'll have to use. We'll discuss tomorrow when maybe we'll fix another time where we can take in live comments, like our friend that has been trying to send
yes,
in text
yes,
messages.
yes, and I've been trying to
Maybe
respond
we'll
to
get
him.
another internet connection so that
Yeah,
we can talk.
and he has been quite emotional about the whole.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we better.
Okay, sir.
No, it's okay. Joel became a political scientist working in Portugal. Doctor, yeah, thank you again for coming. I think we should
Thank you
do
so
this
much, sir, for the
conversation
privilege.
again tomorrow with
Okay,
a
sir.
better network.
Okay, sir. All
Thank
right. You
you.
just let me know.